nobody is hopeless. I've seen some people who like it would seem like would never progress at all just start clicking, and it's really exciting to see. Yeah. That's like honestly one of my favorite things about comedy is seeing people like just like your friends grow or find something that finally clicks and they just start putting it together. Like it just brings a smile on my face thinking about it.
I think you didn't plan the smile. It wasn't a pre-plan. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Pranzata Podcast. This is episode number 86 on this podcast series on YouTube. Today, I have Paul Carson. He is a stand-up comedian from the Philadelphia area. I have some questions for him before we get into it. If you are new to this channel and you like what you hear today on the podcast episode, don't forget to hit subscribe. It is my mission to grow this channel this year, and your support would really mean a lot to me. And also, in addition to that, if you like anything that we talk about or dislike it and you want to chime in on the conversation in the comment section, that would be great as well. So let's get right into it. So my first question for you is, before we set up today, we were talking about the roast battle. So I want to let everybody know that this is only my second time meeting him. The first time I met him was a very bizarre way to meet a human being.
It is the weirdest way.
So he roasted me, or we did a roast battle against each other in Philadelphia, and we had never met before that. We basically just exchanged a bio of all the worst traits we have about each other. And what the funniest thing about it to me was that I feel like we were both so friendly to each other beforehand. We're like, "Hi, nice to meet you." Like, it's so great. And then like 5 minutes later, you're like, "Bitch, you have STD," like whatever. Like it was just like the worst, My question about the roast battle though. So I want to let everybody know listening, he totally kicked my ass. He gave me an ego check. That was the first time I had ever done a roast battle where I got beaten that badly. So my question for you is, one thing that you and I had in common on the stage is that I felt like we both had nervous energy.
100%.
But the difference is you worked through it and conquered, and I did not. So my question for you is nervousness something that you deal with on stage every time you go up? And if so, I'm super impressed by the fact that you were able to put on such a good performance despite being nervous. Is that something that you constantly deal with? And like, how do you have any tips for me or anybody else who does the same thing, like who has to deal with nerves on stage?
Oh, 100%. Like before that, I was just in my car, just like rereading it over and over again. Like I do that every single set with like stand up too, and just like trying to be as rehearsed as possible, because like even one of the judges said it. He was like, "Oh, good job, but your hands were shaking with the page, so like fuck you."
Regardless though, I was just like I was like even though you said the worst things to me, I was very inspired by like seeing you shake but still putting on such a great performance. Like there was something incredibly inspiring about that to me.
I appreciate it.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is what helps you for that is just going up there extra prepared.
Pretty much. Yeah, I'd say so. But also I'm trying to work out of this. I feel like when I'm too rigid with that, like it comes across on stage kind of robotic too. So I'm trying to get better at like feeling loose and like just learning little tricks about that, like even just like smiling or giggling even when there's nothing to smile or giggle about. Like that is
like planning when to smile. You're like planning how to look natural,
right? That sounds so much more robotic.
Let's insert a smile now.
That's what humans do.
Can you ever what might be helpful for you, and I'm saying this from somebody who's never done it, but I'm just like kind of throwing ideas out there. What about an improv class? Like what if you took an improv class, so like every week you're like forced to go up there with no script?
I think that would be very helpful, actually. Yeah, because like just kind of throwing yourself in deep water and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, I guess.
Yeah. What about crowd work? Is that your thing?
I've never like that is terrifying to me. Like I have some friends who are so good at it, and they're just like magicians to me. Like I have no clue how they do it.
Yeah.
How about you? Have you been like trying to do that at all?
It's funny. I'm very similar to you, that I'm like a very analytical, like stick by the script type of person. I'm more comfortable being free in music. Like I can do what we call, like, I guess the musical version of that would be jamming. Like when you get to, my boyfriend's like huge on jamming. He wants to jam all the time. And he's opened me up a lot to like just being like, hey, we didn't rehearse a song in advance, but let's just make something up. So that's been really helpful to me. But when it comes to comedy, I'm a lot like you in the sense that I need to be like super prepared, or else like if I want to go to an open mic because I just feel like I need to practice, I would rather just stay home if I don't have anything prepared to go to even though if it's an open mic. So yeah, I'm similar to you that way. Okay, my next question for you. I promise I'm not bringing this up to get revenge. I'm actually genuinely curious about this. So you had mentioned in your bio when we exchanged bios that you fainted on stage once.
Twice.
The reason I'm interested in this is because that's actually my biggest like nightmare. I'm a fainter. Like I literally almost fainted this morning at the gym.
Really?
Because I didn't eat enough. But because I know I'm a fainter, one of my biggest fears is like, what if I faint on stage? What if I faint on stage? I think about it probably I thought about it the night of the roast battle. I was like, what if I faint on stage? Like,
same here.
It's like, since you actually lived it, is it that bad? Like once you get through it, is it really like, am I hyping myself up for no reason?
It would be hypocritical of me to say hyping yourself up for no reason, because like I went to the doctor afterwards and he said it was like a vasovagal response, which is basically,
I have no idea what that means.
It's like, it's kind of psychological. Like you hype yourself up and you kind of burn through, it was like
energy
your blood sugar quicker, and then your blood pressure spikes and then drops, and then you're out pretty much.
So it's almost like you're in a weird way like burning through your calories or something. Like,
sort of, I guess. Like I don't understand.
Maybe this is like a new weight loss plan. We can come up like if you're just neurotic, you can think your calories away or something like that.
It could work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm the same way. Like I've been kind of like a fainter my whole life too. Like I did it in high school, just in the middle of class one time, just went down. So it's not new territory, but it's not fun. Like you were actually there the first time it happened to me.
It's funny. I didn't remember it till like way after the fact. I was like, wait a second. I think I remember seeing you faint, and I remember that night I was like, is he on drugs? And now I know you're not because of the bio. But my first thought was like, is he on something? Like I was very confused.
Right.
Like, what happened?
It was so weird.
When you're up there fainting, did any part of you like want to stop and say, "Hey, I don't feel good," and walk away? It seemed like you were just trying to keep doing.
I was trying to get to the end of the set because it was just a 4-minute set, and like I felt like the ringing in my ears and the tunnel vision. I was like, if I can just sit down and get to the end of 4 minutes before this tunnel closes, I'm good. And it didn't happen. Well, that time I kind of got through it. The second time I went down. Like it was hot room, like tight quarters, and I started thinking about it more and more. I was like, seriously, second time in a month, it's happening again, and like just went down. And one of my friends from high school who I played soccer with, who I didn't even know did stand up, was in the front row, and apparently he was the one who caught me. And then when I woke up, he's like, "Hey, do you know who I am?" And I was like, "No."
Was that the night I was there, or a different night?
Different night.
Different night. Okay.
I was like, wait. Aunt from high school soccer? Like, what the
fuck? Yeah, I don't know what it is, but like, I've also fainted, so it's not like I'm unfamiliar with fainting in public. Like, it's really not that bad. People just like help you. Like, I mean, it could be someone's dream come true, actually. Like, if they're like missing love and affection. But
Aunt from high school.
But like for me, the idea of fainting on stage is like, I don't know. Like I don't think I would know how to handle it as far as like, do I just stop and tell them like, hey, I'm going to faint? Or like it just sounds like such an awkward situation. But that's funny that you said you like wanted to get through it regardless, because that's kind of how I was this morning. So I did like a heavy workout and I only ate one banana, like thinking like, oh, that's going to be enough. And then I was like, fuck, I'm going to faint. Like I have to get food now. I could have went next door to the Dunkin' Donuts to get like a bagel or something like that, but I still drove myself to the Whole Foods to get. And I'm like blacking out, like I can't stop the mission of gaining muscle. And I'm like filling up a tray of like spinach and like blue cheese crumbles and like chickpeas. And the lady's like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just like," and I was like, I still like was like had a mission.
I respect it, willowy, but you have standards.
Yeah. But like the smarter thing to do would definitely just to eat like whatever was available.
What were you doing, like a deadlift or something?
I think I was doing squats. Like I had like the whole, and like one banana isn't gonna cut it. For that. Like you need like
that's a 2 banana exercise for sure.
Like 10 banana exercise. All right. Okay. Next question. All right. I asked this to the last comedian, and I'm just curious to see what your answer is in contrast to this. So you've been doing comedy for 8 years. Is that correct? In your opinion, how many days a week of open mics is required to see improvement?
I feel like that's different for every person.
Individual.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, like some people like romanticize a grind a little bit to the point where it might be counterproductive. Like if you're out every night but not writing, or if you're
not doing anything.
Yeah, or your life isn't balanced, like you're not hanging out with like friends or family or whatever.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Personally, I try to get like at least 3 nights a week of performing, or like I feel a lot better when I get 4, but like 3 feels good for me because then like I get to rewrite stuff. And yeah, but like I feel like it's totally depends on the person. But
yeah, because you hear a lot, and the reason I'm asking is because I was really shocked by what the last girl said. She was like, I'm gonna be honest with you, she goes, I actually really don't do that many. But mind you, this girl, she was just on Kill Tony and had a good review on Kill Tony. She just did a competition where they were competing for like the best comedy, like, and there was like a bunch of, and she won the competition. So I'm like, she's killing it. And she's like, this is gonna sound crazy, and other comedians are gonna, you know, make fun of me for this. She's like, but I really believe that if you're rehearsing and writing and practicing in your mind, that's just as good as an open mic. She's like, I know that's not necessarily true because you have to do the crowd work and everything like that. She's like, but I'm a fan of like, I just like imagine the audience and anticipate and think about it. She's like, I only do mics like once a week and sometimes like once every 2 weeks. And I'm like, wow. But she's doing well. So I'm like, that's crazy. So that's why I asked you, because your answer kind of confirms like what you just said, that it's really an individualized thing, because what works for her might not work for somebody else. But I like what you said about romanticizing the grind, because her answer kind of proves that. It's like she's not out there grinding constantly, but she is in her room like writing shit. You know what I mean?
How does it work with music? Like I know people like, can you just practice a song in your room and it's like, is it more so you have to be in person with comedy than in music, or is it kind of equal or more one way or the other?
It's funny. I was talking about this with the fitness lady. There is a certain element of performance that can only be practiced in person. So you can you can rehearse your song to death in your room, but you can't really you can't really practice the nervousness that you're going to feel on stage. So even if you go on stage very like well rehearsed, in the moment there's always going to be something, like the sound isn't going to be quite right when it's in a full room, and the speakers, you won't be able to hear yourself. Like there's always going to be something. So it does take like a certain amount of performing in public to get used to that. One way to get over that is to what I do is I record myself practicing, so it gives me that like feeling that I'm being watched.
Okay.
So that like it's not exactly like performing live.
Something is on.
It's something because you'd be surprised. Like when you're practicing, you feel like, oh yeah, whatever, and then as soon as the camera's on, like you kind of stiffen up, like because you're like, oh my god, this is, what if I put this on YouTube? The whole world's gonna see. Like 5 people, but you know. It kind of gives you that feeling of like performance. So it's interesting. It's in many ways it's similar to comedy, that it's like you do need to be there in person to get certain things out, because you know. Are
the fears the same? Because like with at least personally with comedy, my fear is always like I'm gonna forget something. Like is that kind of a fear with music, or like what is, not worst case scenario, but like what is the root of the nerves? Like how does that manifest? In
music, like, or in music specifically. Yeah. I'm not as nervous in music as I used to be. It took years of like working through the nerves. I think for me, it's like, yeah, there's a fear of losing control of over your body, which is like, now that I think about it, it's like the same fear of like fainting. It's like losing control over your body. But there's a fear that you're going to be playing piano or whatever instrument you play, guitar, or you know, for people who experience stage fright, not some people don't, but for the people who do, there's kind of like a fear that you're not going to have control over your body, and even if you're well rehearsed, you're not going to be able to find the notes on the spot because you're going to be too psyched out by the people. Right. So and when I was much younger, it would happen. Like my hands would tremble, like while I was playing piano, and like I just couldn't find the notes, even though I knew the song perfectly. So that's the fear. After like years of just performing more, I finally got over it. I won't say I got over the nerves, like I'm still nervous on stage, but now I'm comfortable, like going back to what you're saying before, I'm comfortable with the nerves now. Like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be nervous, like it's right, part of the deal.
Have you found that like jamming with your boyfriend has been helpful in that?
Oh yeah. Playing with other people, like if comedy was a collaborative thing where like 5 stand-up people went up at the same time, it would be far less nerve-wracking because you have like other people. I guess like an improv group would be like maybe like that, but like you have more people to like, okay, it's not just me. I'm not, if I suck, the other guy's good and he'll cover me.
Right.
So it's like a similar thing with music. When you're performing with a group of people on stage, you don't feel as like naked up there. When I've done solo classical piano, that shit is terrifying.
That sounds so daunting.
It's possibly worse than comedy. Like it's I mean, I feel worse at comedy because I'm newer at comedy, but when I first started music, the idea of playing a solo classical piano performance when it's like very highbrow and like the people are snotty, like watching you, and they like know the song perfectly.
Oh, so they know how it's. Oh, are you allowed to put your own flavor on it, or is it
not
very
with
much
classical? So I went to school for music and I studied classical, and it was very like the teachers that were judging you and grading you at those performances, like, you're not allowed to improvise, or it's kind of like lame. Like, I mean, like I learned a lot from it, but it's kind of lame in that way that you're not really supposed to put your spin on it. So it's interesting.
Do you have any favorites, like composers or
composers? Do you know anything about classical, or just
very surface level, just putting it on in the background on YouTube?
I would say Bach and Chopin.
Okay.
I mean, they're like the big names. So if you're familiar with classical, you'd probably know who they are. But definitely Bach and Chopin. They're my shit.
Chopin has been on a lot of 10-hour loop YouTube videos.
You probably know some of the things I've played, but like you might not know the names of it. But I can guarantee you, like if I showed you, you'd be like, oh yeah, I know that one.
Oh, that's diddly diddly do or whatever.
They also name things like they're like the E flat this and sonata and C minor E flat. Like they name things like kind of lame too. Like they don't have names for things.
And then Mozart breaks the seal with that.
Oh yeah.
Leck mich in Arsch.
Okay, so my next. Oh, you studied German, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, my next question for you is. Oh, all right. This kind of goes hand in hand with what we were talking about before. How do you actually make progress in comedy? So, okay, yeah, you have the writing in between, but like, what exactly do you have to do to get better at the next open mic? Do you record yourself and like judge how the audience, and do you try to change certain words? Like, what's your process of actually trying to gauge how to get better each time?
I always like record every single set, like if not audio then video, and then like my rule is immediately on the car ride home I have to listen to it and hate myself pretty quickly. Like it really helps me like it helps you hate the bad parts of your set quicker, as opposed to like kidding yourself when you hear it on the car ride home and you're like, oh, I suck so bad, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, but that was okay. And then but in terms of like improving, I feel like just being forced to do longer sets and stretch and really not have enough to do it, you kind of get comfortable with like what you have at least, and then you kind of get better at like lacing it together and just kind of being thrown into the deep end, probably having it be too deep and then paring it back a little bit, I guess.
Oh, that's funny because we do that. I do that with some of my piano students too. Like when you said about putting in the deep end and scaling it back, like sometimes I'll give them a song that's like way too hard for them. They'll actually learn it kind of shitty, but then they'll come back to the songs that were their level and suddenly it'll be easy. They'll be like, oh shit, like the stuff that was kind of challenging before is really easy for me now. So it's kind of like similar thing. That's interesting.
Do you feel like you learn through teaching as well? Like
I do. I learned a lot of piano through teaching. As a matter of fact, I used to be really bad at reading music, like reading. They call it sight reading in music, where you actually read the notes on the paper. I used to only pretty much play by ear.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, like I could read, but not like very slow. When I started teaching, I was teaching beginners. I could read beginner music, like which is the same note over and over. So by the time I like some of my students advanced, now I could read music. So it was like pretty crazy that I was able to do that. And like similar things too. Like if I have a student that's a little more advanced, I kind of like learn with them, like, you know, certain things.
Because they're counting on you to be the authority of like knowing it. And so you
better know your shit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like it's funny. Like they do have comedy classes, right? Like
I think so. I've never done any. I know some people poo-poo them. I don't know how to feel. Like, I feel like it's probably helpful for getting over, like, if you are scared to start. I think that's probably a good, but, like, I can't really talk with any knowledge on it because I've never actually taken it. But I feel like you have to jump and be self-taught at some point with it.
Yeah. You're right. People do poo-poo it, but I think there is like there is like a way to break certain jokes down. Like you don't necessarily have to do it through a school, but like when you're kind of teaching yourself how to be a comedian, there'll be certain comedians I listen to and I look up to. I'll be like, oh shit, they do this pattern. In like you'll kind of like break down in music. They call it music theory. I've heard people call it joke theory. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before. But like there's like the rule of three. Like there's all these like rules and stuff like that. For who are some of the comedians you look up to personally that you feel like you've accidentally have their style just by listening to them so much?
Earlier on, I used to just strictly do like one-liners, and I loved like Stephen Wright and Anthony Jeselnik and them. But like gradually got into just kind of like essay style writing, like just topic or thesis, whatever, and then like stupid arguments. But if I listen to some people too long, I'll kind of fall into their speaking rhythms. Like I love listening to Norm Macdonald, but I can't too much because I'll just start going like or whatever.
That's funny. Yeah, no, he was interesting. His jokes are very like, to me, sometimes they're like so funny in their simplicity. Like that's what I like about him, is that like he's very out there because his jokes are like simple in a weird way, like complicated and simple at the same time.
Like he's done all the thinking to make it that simple, so the audience doesn't really have to do the work, I feel like, which is kind of his, I guess genius is a strong word, but like no,
I mean, I could say that.
How about you? Do you have anybody who kind of
I like Louis C.K. a lot. I know that's controversial because
some of his still one of my favorites.
Some of his things. I have to admit though, I didn't love his latest special. I don't know if you've seen it.
Is that Madison Square Garden or?
I don't remember where it was, but he literally just released it a few weeks ago.
Was he like reading the Bible or something?
Yes.
Okay, I've seen bits and pieces of it. I haven't watched it all the way through yet.
There were some, like the Bible thing was cool. There were some things that were really great, but overall, and like I feel terrible saying this because I love him, but overall I think it was his worst special. I don't know if it's because he's like getting older, or it could be because I've listened to him for so long, I kind of know his patterns by now. I'm like, oh, he's using his, like, you know when they like make a remake of like a Disney movie, and they kind of like take the same formula and like do it exactly. Like I think I know him so well now that I wasn't too surprised by a lot. Like I was like, oh, he's doing that thing that he did in his special, or he's doing just with different words, but the same like patterns. You know what I mean? So I think that might be it. But Louis C.K., to answer your question, I like Mark Normand a lot. He's very like joke writey, like he's like an old fashioned joke writer.
I can see like just putting a quarter in a machine and he pops up and tells jokes.
And he's living his, like, he's meant for this, because I feel like he can't, I don't know if you like listen to him a lot, but like he can't stop joking.
Yeah, he can't
like,
not.
He can't, which is funny that my next question is kind of about that. And since you've been doing comedy for a while now, I feel like you might have some insight for this. I've been throwing this idea around in my head. Do you think that funny is like a muscle that's worked out?
I think so.
Like I feel like Mark Normand's always working out his funny muscle. That sounds weird, but I always wonder if like it's something that if you practice joke writing every day or making jokes to your friends every day, you actually get funnier over time.
I think so. I think you just become aware of like opportunities when funny can arise if you're like always looking for it. Like if you kind of put on your sensors and you're always on the lookout for it, I feel like it pops up more. And I think definitely, you can work it like a muscle, because like if you're out of practice for like over COVID, I was less funny in conversation, I feel like too, just because I wasn't on stage or wasn't writing or something. Yeah.
It could go the other way too sometimes. I've met some comedians that like they're trying to always work out that funny muscle to the point where they're like annoying, like where they're like, because it's like too desperate or something.
Right. Yeah.
Like I don't get that vibe from Mark Normand. Like Mark Normand, it's like he loves this and he just wants to like sling it. Who he is. Yeah. But some comedians are like, hear this joke, is it funny? Like and you can like hear, you can like feel the tension around them. You're like, I have to laugh at them or else they're gonna kill themselves tonight.
And that's exhausting.
Yeah. So I don't know. Are you someone who's funny like on your everyday, like are you naturally a funny person? Like growing up, were you a funny person?
Kind of on and off. Like I feel like it was always just kind of like with my friend group, funny was kind of like the social currency, I feel like. So you just kind of learn to get rewarded by just going for the joke. Yeah. And like over time I've had to work on being a better conversationalist, because like not all of life is always just going for the joke, I feel like. So I want to get more well-rounded in that regard. But like, yeah.
I feel like my podcast is a mix. Sometimes it could be funny, but sometimes it's like very serious. So I feel like I exercise the not funniness.
I think it's a cool mix.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you saw, I had Ricky. Do you know Ricky Ramesses?
I met him once at a show. Nice guy.
He's like a really, he's a hilarious guy. I've had him on the podcast a few times, and the first like few times I had him, he was just like cracking jokes the whole time, and we were cracking up. Then the third time I had him, in the middle of the podcast, he was like apologizing. He's like, "I'm sorry this isn't funny, but I need to talk." And I'm like, "Dude, you don't always have to be,
right.
like, you know, to funny." And he's like, "Yeah, you're right." Like, but it was just interesting that, you know, sometimes we get into those kind of conversations on here. It's not always funny stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. He used to be a rapper, right?
He wasn't. I don't think he was the great. No offense, Ricky, I love you, but I think that's why he went into comedy, because he wasn't the greatest at it. But at one point, he was a rapper. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he like really looked up to Will Smith.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I do have another question for you. Mm-hmm. Ooh. Okay. What are some things that you see other comedians do that make you cringe? Like I have some. I can say one if it like helps inspire you.
Okay. Yeah. Go for it.
I hate when the comedian isn't getting a reaction on the stage and they automatically like turn it around on the audience in a not funny way, like where they're like, you guys are just easily offended, like they start like when they start getting like clearly defensive that the audience isn't laughing, and they like they think they're being funny about it, but they're just like, their insecurities are just like so like shining, like it's like so obvious, you know. What is there something for you that you're like, oh, I hate when comedians do this, or like a particular joke topic that you're done with, or like,
I mean, the clips of that start with what do you do for a living or how long have you been together, like
for the audience, like for the yeah, that's another one. Or like when comedians, another one is like when they're doing their own bits and they're like, oh, I hate dating or dating apps. You're like, oh my God, I've seen this like way too many times. I don't want to give the joke away, but I knew one comedian who she starts with that line. She's like, dating something else, right? But then she totally flips it.
I love when people do that.
She like that really, I loved that, because at first my reaction was like, oh, here's another one. But then she kind of like turned it and went to a different direction, and she did like word play with the word dating. So that was really
just totally subvert the expectations too.
Yeah. Do you have any jokes like that, or?
Not that I can think of, really. Yeah. Maybe I should try to write some, but I totally get what you're saying with like the people who turn on the audience, like, or they'll like tell something that totally bombs or is like just feels like hateful or whatever, and then they'll be like, what, you don't like the basketball or whatever the broad topic of the joke is, and it's like, no, not that. Like, yeah. I guess just overall lack of self-awareness weaponized kind of turns me off a little bit.
Have you, in your years doing comedy, have you seen, and this isn't a shit talking session, but just have you seen any comedians that have not improved? Like they're still at it and they're not getting it, like something they're not getting?
Very rarely. I can't think of anybody specifically in particular. Like I've kind of seen the other side of the coin where like nobody is hopeless. I've seen some people who like it would seem like would never progress at all just start clicking, and it's really exciting to see. Yeah. That's like honestly one of my favorite things about comedy is seeing people like just like your friends grow or find something that finally clicks and they just start putting it together. Like it just brings a smile on my face thinking about it.
I think you didn't plan the smile. It wasn't a pre-planned.
You know, like humans.
I think for me, the breakthrough I'm trying to get to is being able to feel confident on stage. Like we're talking about the nerves and stuff. I love comedy, and I'm like very passionate about like joke writing, and I'm very passionate about watching other comedians, and it's my thing. But I'm not yet like, I don't go up there with like the attitude like, hey, what's up, everybody? Right, it's just not me. And like I've heard a lot of advice from other people about like you have to fake the confidence in a way, or like you kind of have to come up with a stage presence or like a stage character that may not exactly be you. That could also be bad advice. Like maybe the better idea is to like actually be you, and if you're a nervous wreck, just like own it on stage too.
Like if that's not your energy, that's not your energy type of thing.
Yeah, so that's kind of like where I'm at right now, where like the breakthrough I'm trying to get is just feeling more comfortable on stage.
Right. I feel like whatever, at least personally, I've found like whatever feels like my natural inclination to lean into, like people say like, oh, find your voice or whatever, which seems kind of like cliche, right? And whatever. Yeah. But I think a lot of that is just like not really fighting against what excites you, kind of, with your jokes a little bit.
Gotcha.
I don't know. It could be different for you or any other person, but at least personally, it's just kind of like, oh, like at points I've been like, oh, I want to start being like, oh, more like tension buildy or whatever, and that's not me. And then I realized, oh, I like being light and fun and silly or whatever.
Or like even the joke topics you pick, like when you're writing something, you might be. I was writing today, and I was going through a process where I was like, this would be an interesting bit, and then as I'm writing it, I'm like, no, this would be offensive. Like I was writing a bit about how like they should. Like sexual harassment should come back because like it's the only way I got my confidence. Like that's
a great premise.
But I'm writing it thinking like, no, this isn't gonna fly because it's gonna come across as too harsh. Like with the way the days are going, or people aren't gonna get it. But like what the advice you're basically saying is like, if that's what you genuinely think is funny and that's your vibe, just like try it out. Like lean into what you are.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, it might be a little hypocritical coming from me though, because like. I've also had that like concern of like, oh, is this bit too dark or too mean? Like if I bomb with a bit that feels dark or mean, I get off stage and I feel like guilty about it. Like, oh, I ruined the show or whatever. And I'm trying to like write brighter, I guess.
Write brighter.
I don't know. Like, because I start off very light and try to bank all this goodwill at the beginning of the set and then work into like maybe some darker, maybe some like... Yeah. Not gross, but just weirder stuff. And like if it throws people off, I don't know, I feel like weird about it afterwards, and like not guilty, but like that's the closest emotion I can assign to it, I guess. I don't know.
Interesting. When you do comedy, do you feel like a sense of purpose behind doing it that's like spiritual in a way? Like you feel like you have to give something to the audience? Like are you kind of in tune with that, like where you feel like your mission is to do something for the audience, or is it purely just about the craft and growing it for yourself? Like how is your relationship there with the audience and yourself?
Probably the latter. Like it's more selfish, I feel like. Yeah. Like there is like whenever I see some people are like, "Oh, I'm going to give my gift of laughter to the crowd."
What I mean.
I'm like
some people,
chill out, dude.
I have some friends who are like that. Like I had his name was Andre Mitchell. He was on my podcast, and I asked him like, "What's your thing with comedy? Like why do you do it?" He's like, "I want to change the world." Like through like he's very serious about it. And then I have some other people who are like, "I just like it. Like I don't give a fuck about the audience." You know.
And I admire those people's confidence, and if it works for them and that's what they genuinely feel, then that's awesome, because they seem to move fast and move well and move happily.
Yeah.
But personally, I know I'd be bullshitting myself if I was like, "Oh, I'm a gift." Like,
well, that's what I thought when you said like you feel guilty if you disappoint the audience. I'm thinking maybe he's of the mindset that like the audience is like it's like a spiritual connection with the audience. Like that's what I was thinking, but it's
more like, oh, I ruined these normal people's night.
All right. So next. Oh, okay. This question. We only have 2 more questions left, but the next one is: do you find joy in your day job to support your comedy, or when you're working, are you kind of like watching the clock, like I can't wait to get home to do comedy?
That. I mean, I like the people I work with; they're great, but it's not my passion. Like,
what do you do again?
I work on contracts for the government. So it's not
that's pretty interesting.
Get dental supplies to soldiers. So it's not the most exciting thing in the world.
Yeah.
But like it's low enough like thought energy, and it's done it for.
Yes.
So like I can focus on this.
That's when you're trying to build something that you actually want to do, that is the best kind of job you had. I'll never forget this. One time I wanted to work as a cashier at a salad place, and that's all I wanted to do. And I went in there with that purpose. It was years ago, and I was a little bit younger, and I was like, I just want to do this to support, my music. So I want something low energy. Like, how hard could it be to like stand at the salad place? Like, they only get probably a rush hour during like lunchtime, and like I just punch in the things, and the other people make the salad. For some reason, because I was so confidently wanted the lowest job, the guy who hired me was like, "We want to make you manager," and I'm like, "You don't understand." like it was almost like I was like I had a cool vibe. Like I was like, I'll just take. Like, like certain people, they come to the job like, I'll do anything. Like, I'm here to change and I'm just like, yeah, I'm like,
that needy energy. You didn't have
any needy energy. So the manager was like, like, we think you could be the next owner of the salad place in another town. And I'm like, no, I literally just like, I know I'm 27, 28 years old. And like, I have a great, it said I was a manager in the past, but like, I literally just want to be the cashier. Like, I don't want to I just want to make $10 an hour punching in numbers. And that I don't want to waste a dime of my mental energy on it, which I think is if you really think you can't give yourself to a job, that's the responsible thing to do. Because you wouldn't want to like be like an ER doctor,
right? Like whatever,
like comedy, like you're like giving somebody open heart surgery, and you're just thinking like, what bit can I get out of this? You know what I mean?
What about you successfully nagged a salad place? Have you ever seen the movie Ted?
No.
Okay, they have kind of like a thing like that where the little teddy bear's trying to get a job at a grocery store, and he's like, fuck you to the boss, and the boss is like, you stood up to me. I respect that. You're going to be the boss.
Yeah. That was pretty much exactly what happened at the salad place. And I didn't last there either. I think I stayed for like a week because I kept getting that vibe that he wanted me to like, and I was just like, I can't take this. Like,
he wanted you to rise up the ranks after a week. Damn.
Yeah, he wanted me.
Damn, you got him wrapped around the finger quickly.
I don't know. I think I was just the only person there who like had a resume that said I had a job for like ever. Like there's a lot of people there that was like their first job, and I guess I looked like I could be the most responsible one there because I was like a little older than everybody.
You could lead these people.
Okay, we're gonna save that question. I don't have any other questions prepared. Okay, so let's just get right into this question. We're a little early, but I think this question is pretty deep, so we'll probably last. Okay. This kind of goes back into what we were saying before, but it's less about comedy and more about life itself. This is a little intense, but I like to throw these questions at my guests because I'm into philosophy and stuff like that. Are you ready? As far as how you're living your life now, do you feel like life has an inherent meaning or purpose? Or are you more of the person who's like, I just believe in absurdism, that I don't know the purpose of life and I don't care. I just live my life every day and don't think about that. Like, what's more your mindset at this point in your life? Because it could change,
At this point in my life, I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I like making my friends and family know I care about them. That's kind of like priority number one, I guess, right now. But beyond that, I really don't know. Like, I don't have like a North Star that I'm shooting for or anything like that.
Are you like a religious type of person, or?
I mean, raised Catholic, still like religious, but less like, I mean, I see a lot of the bullshit that but like less of that, but like, yeah, I don't really, I'm kind of taking life as it comes, and like if I feel like I want something or should be moving in that direction, I'll start moving in that direction.
Yeah, that's kind of like, I guess, Taoism. That my boyfriend is into philosophy too, and he was like really into it, and he eventually reached a point where he's like, I just believe in Taoism. Like Taoism, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's like kind of the belief that something exists, but you'll never be able to understand it. So stop trying to figure out what it is, just trust it and just live life like what it's kind of like exactly what you said.
It's kind of like I get annoyed with people who speak with certain, like I was just going on a walk the other day, and like just random street preacher came up to me and like and it was annoying, like the certainty with which he talked, like it just like he was doing like anti-LGBT stuff too, and like but like citing the Bible like it was like, see, gotcha, like type shit. And just like anybody who speaks without considering that they could be wrong, or like somebody else could be believe just as hard in their direction, like that kind of annoys me. It like I have no desire to make anybody else think the way I think.
Yeah, that's I agree with you on that one, because like I went down a rabbit hole of reading about Catholicism myself. And at first I liked everything I heard. Like I was like, oh, okay, I like this. This is interesting. I like that. And then I reached a point where I was like, I don't get the gay thing. Like I don't get the anti-gay thing. It doesn't make sense to me. And then I remembered, no offense to my friend, if he hears this, I love him dearly, but just kind of quoting a conversation we had, he's like a devout Catholic. And I asked him about it. I'm like, I like a lot of your concepts and principles in the Catholic religion, but I just can't get over the anti-gay marriage thing. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, is there a way that Catholics are on the right track, but they maybe just had a couple things wrong that they just need to update? And I was like, has there ever been anything wrong historically that they got wrong and had to correct later? And he was like, honestly, no, they've never, everything's been the same. And I was like, interesting. Later, I looked out. They got the planets wrong. Like I was reading a book about like astronomy and stuff like that, and like whatever Big Bang Theory. And I can't remember the names of the scientists, but was it Copernicus? Like there was one scientist that was like, "Hey, the Earth is not the center of the
like Copernicus and Galileo." I think
Copernicus and Galileo. They're like, the Earth is not the center, and they're writing books about it, and the Catholics were like, "You're in big trouble." Like I think they tried to kill them or like something like that. And I'm thinking back to that conversation with my friend. I'm like, they got that wrong. So why? I just don't understand why. Like you're saying, why do they have to say this is it and it can't change? It's like I might be more on board with your religion if you're just willing to upgrade a couple things. Like, you know what I mean? So I agree with you on that one. Like there's some good concepts in the Catholic religion, but I can't like get behind some of the ideas, you know, it's a bit much for me.
Like I do consider myself religious and like Catholic just because like, I guess that's how I was raised or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I wonder how much of the stuff, like you see it in like Islam, and you see, I guess, an even more big example would be the Amish. Like, how much of it is just conflating your dogma to like the time that it was founded? Like, how much of that is significant to what you're actually like doing?
Yeah.
Pretty much like, oh, the wearing a bonnet or whatever. Is that really what God wanted, or is that just what they were wearing at the time that you had this idea? Type of thing.
I've been reading recently the Hindu religion, and one of the things I like about it so far, it might be that I haven't gotten to the point that I don't like yet, like because that's what happened to me with the Catholic.
Chapter 7.
Yeah, I'm like shit. They said that they don't believe in changing people's minds with their religion, because they said they believe that everybody's religion is just a path to trying to get to the same place. And I'm like, that makes sense to me. That's great. I like that. But like I said, I'm just kind of like newly learning about it. So I might eventually reach a point where I'm like, oh, like that's the part where you sacrifice the Jews or like, something like that. Like that's the part where, you know, something, I don't know.
Chapter 9, punch a puppy.
Like something like that. All right. So we're just about reaching the hour mark. So we're going to end the podcast here. Before we end it, let them know where they can find you if they are from the Philadelphia area and they want to see you performing or anything like that. Where can they find you?
Okay, I usually post all my like show posters of upcoming shows on Instagram at silly_boy_Paul, and I made that before I realized I was going to have to say it out loud to people, and now I'm stuck with it.
Now you're just like silly_. It's funny. My name is Pranzata, and I never meant it to be like my stage name. It was just my Instagram handle. It's just like part of my last name. And now everybody thinks that's my name now. They're like,
you get people bringing you up on stage. It's
yeah,
like, all right,
and I'm like, at this point, I'm just kind of like accepting it, because I'm like, they're not like, they're just gonna call me that. Like they're like Pranzata. It's Pranzata. Like they think it's like my middle name or my nickname or my whole last name. My whole last name is Pranzatelli, and I just put like Pranzat is the Ellie's missing, and then A is just my first initial. So it's Pranzat A, my first initial, and then all of a sudden it's just like the new thing. And like I looked up the Italian translation of it, and it means we ate lunch. My name is in Italy.
Wait, Pranzatelli or Pranzata?
Pranzata. Oh, so like it's like the A makes it like past tense or something. Like pranzare is to eat lunch, so it's like Pranzata, we ate lunch.
And I hope this blows up in Italy, and they're just like, okay, they didn't eat the whole podcast.
It's the We Ate Lunch podcast. No, I think Pranzatelli translates to what does it translate to? Lunch and beautiful hair combined, which is like, you know, I got some beautiful hair, and like I eat.
Gotta get you a sandwich, and this is very on brand.
Yeah, this is perfect. All right, so I'm gonna include his link to his Instagram below if anybody here is listening and they're in the Philadelphia area and they want to check him out. Anyways, guys, that's the Pranzata Podcast, episode number 86. I hope you guys had a good night. Bye.